Thank you. As an African American woman in particular, I think one of the most important things I'd like to make about EFCA is the fact that it, as far as many African Americans and women are concerned, is just plain undemocratic. One of the most fundamental tenets of American democracy is the secret ballot, and if EFCA is passed, as currently written, or frankly in any format that has been proposed or bandied about, it will have a very negative impact, particularly on African American businesses and African American employees. Most black businesses, black-owned businesses today are first and generation black-owned businesses. Many people remember the history of intimidation and unvoting practices that plagued the black community really just what seems like a few years ago, and was in fact a few decades ago, and that alone in and of itself is a reason why you will see many African Americans completely against passage of EFCA in any form whatsoever. And with that, I will turn it over to the next speaker.
David Lizarraga.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is David Lizarraga, and I'm National Chair of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and we represent 3 million Hispanic-owned businesses in this country, generating approximately $400 billion in revenues. Hispanic businesses are the fastest growing segment in the small business community, and this legislation is something that would be very detrimental, I believe, to small businesses. Currently, they're having a very difficult time. It'd be detrimental to small businesses because, for one thing, it would put additional burden on the fastest growing job creators in the United States, and that's small and medium-sized businesses and Hispanic businesses, and particularly Latino-owned Hispanic businesses. It's not that we're anti-labor. We're pro-small business and pro the risk takers, the people that really get very little support from, quite often, both parties in support in the area that it requires their risk, their money, their credit cards, quite often even to get their businesses started, and then to put an additional burden on them. And with this card check legislation, I think would be so detrimental to those businesses that are creating the jobs in the United States today. When everybody else is going offshore, and when huge corporate businesses are closing down, it seems unimaginable that one would want to put additional pressure on small businesses that are generating with very little support from the Small Business Administration and from any other sources, from banks that are not providing credit to small businesses, to put additional burden of this nature. And as Michelle indicated a little bit earlier, it is typically undemocratic.
Thank you. And then Adolfo.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me just add a couple of things. I think Michelle and David have outlined many of the, I think, terrible aspects of this Employee Forced Act that's being proposed, and that has to do with intimidation and really coercing particularly minorities and those that are more vulnerable. As a Hispanic American, I can tell you that our community, something Michelle just alluded to, the black community, that our community should be especially sensitive to is intimidation. There are questions of education, language, barriers that already exist, and unfortunately not the best track record in terms of the treatment of Hispanics and many people trying to make a livelihood. To now be in a situation through a process that denies the secret ballot and protection that we all enjoy when we vote. Certainly the members of Congress that are actually voting for this and so forth, they've been elected through a secret ballot. They're denying the opportunity for people who go to the workplace to enjoy that same privilege. But instead of repeating some of these very serious concerns that are so well articulated by Michelle and David, there's another aspect I think that the listeners to this call need to understand, and that is there isn't an agreement here after you've got to this hurdle of forcing people to sign a card and have an open election, not a secret secret ballot, that if there isn't an agreement between the union that's established and the employer, this then goes to an arbitration of government bureaucrats deciding what the contract and the terms would be. So you've taken away a situation where everyone potentially could be a loser, keeping in mind, and I think most people's experience with government being such that the people making these decisions are far removed from the workplace, don't understand the needs of the employees or the employers for that matter, and after 90 days, just simply 90 days and not having an agreement, this process actually kicks in. And you ultimately have a situation for a 2-year period where the government comes in and actually dictates the terms of a contract that could be very detrimental to the people who actually signed this union card in the first instance, or to employers, or probably in the case of an arbitration run by the government, really to both. So you have a losing proposition here by forcing people through open intimidation. No one likes to be asked in public to sign up for something or contribute. People want to do things in a thoughtful, meaningful way in the first instance. That would be taken away by this particular bill. But even if that were to be rectified, because there's so much outrage over it, what's really a bombshell here is this arbitration that the government ultimately is going to be deciding the labor conditions and the contracts for employees or employees if they can't come to an agreement, something that doesn't happen in any other industry.
From our perspective at the Independent Women's Forum, even if this act is fraught with many, many problems, the secret ballot and card check being one of the most problematic, but even if they enter into negotiations and they reach some sort of a compromise where card check is no longer a problem, then the next problem that you have to deal with is the mandatory arbitration clause, which again is a huge problem, particularly for African American women-owned and Hispanic-owned businesses, many of which are small businesses. They are growing businesses, and if these types of businesses are put into a position where you've got to deal with a government appointed arbitrator setting wages, setting employee benefits, and that type of thing, they are going to have a completely opposite effect than what the American public is being told about EFCA. They are going to put many of these businesses out of business and set us back many, many, many years. I mean, EFCA, almost every provision of EFCA is problematic. So once they do away with card check, the next thing they'd have to do away with, from my perspective, is the mandatory arbitration clause.
This is Adolfo Franco. Can I just add something to that? Very quickly, I couldn't agree more with Michelle's assessment on it. I think this is the so-called Harkin compromise and so forth. It's a ruse. It's getting away from something that's already caught on to people, that there's something about fairness, and everyone has just a visceral reaction to this secret ballot issue, and it's resonating with the American people. So they're willing to drop that provision. But just as Michelle has articulated, to my thinking, the binding arbitration is equally troubling, and that's at the heart of this bill. It's important to understand that by arbitration, what would happen is the government would dictate the contract, and there would be no opportunity for the union to ratify it. So you have a situation here where it would be really a pillar of American labor laws being changed. Right now, under current law, a company is required to bargain in good faith with the union. So that's the standards we have today. There's an opportunity for the union to employ all kinds of mechanisms for corporate campaigns and so forth, as we all know. This is all taken away. And you have somebody coming in and dictating terms that I think are given the state of the economy, and even if it weren't even if we had a good economy, you're allowing a government bureaucrat which doesn't know or understand a company's business or the unions or the employees' concerns to come in and just simply set the terms. And this would be a radical change for our country, and more importantly for our country, for the economy, which simply could be in a situation where I think a lot of businesses would just simply go out of business.
Yeah, to piggyback on what you just said, the mandatory arbitration clause is tantamount to a government takeover of business, whether it is a small business, medium business, or a corporate giant. It is tantamount to the takeover of a business. We keep hearing people talking about socialism or nationalizing businesses. This is what the labor unions want. This is what the arbitration clause would do. All of us as American citizens that start our own businesses in this country have right now the free will and the right to start your own businesses and to negotiate with your employees what your wages will be, what your benefits will be, how you conduct business, and there's absolutely no reason whatsoever for the government to take over your business and dictate these terms for you. What is the incentive to start your own business? And we certainly cannot be a nation of all workers without employers.
What Congress needs to understand is that our small businesses need affordable health care, a fair share of contracting and immigration reform, and especially access to capital. What small businesses do not need is to see their costs skyrocket. That is what the Employee Free Choice Act could do to our nation's small businesses. This legislation, as far as I can see, contains the most sweeping change in labor laws in 70 years, and one that could affect millions of small businesses for the worse.
Yeah, and I would add, I know we're taking a lot of time on this, it would definitely be devastating to business. I think it's going to be devastating to employees. You're taking away a right that they have to ratify a contract. That's taken away. Now you're giving that up, and you're giving it up to a government bureaucrat that doesn't understand your needs. So I think everyone loses in this proposition.